Hi everyone, hope you're doing okay. I know times have been trying recently. This is not really a video that I wanted to make in this way. I wanted to actually do it on the boat and show you around and explain a few bits and pieces. But the thing is, we're still in lockdown here in the UK. We have been since November time, I believe. I've kind of lost track now. And yeah, it looks like there's no sign of it kind of ending anytime soon. So I've resorted to a bit of Excel boringness for you all. But really, kind of, it does serve its purpose. So what I want to go through is the costs of buying Sally Jane, the costs of running and keeping it, what I've spent on one-off stuff, and what it's cost me to learn how to actually drive a boat and get everything that is kind of needed, because you can just buy a boat and you can just go out, but from a safety perspective that's not really the best way to do it for you or other water users around you, and particularly considering that I'm on a river that's got a lot of very big boats, ferries and industrial barges and whatnot going up and down it. Safety is kind of a key requirement. The other thing to bear in mind as we're looking at these numbers and we're going through these numbers is that I don't come from a boating background, so I didn't have anything lying around. I've had to buy everything. Now, some of it, arguably, you can do without. So what I've done is I've looked at just the core components that I needed, really. Stuff that, you know, it's almost impossible to go safely boating without. And so, yeah, without further ado, here's a very boring spreadsheet. So I've split it into 5 sections, realistically. One-off costs and then recurring costs and then training costs I've incurred so far. Totaled it all up to the spend in year 1 and then balanced out what the estimated year 2 spend will actually be on top of that. Now, I'm not looking at pricing on this with regards to stuff like financed boats. This is all upfront, you know. So year 1 I'm showing the initial boat purchase as 47,000, because that is the year 1 costs there. If you take on finance, it will be much lower. You might pay, say, 25-30% or something up front, 10-12 grand, something like that, and then the rest on a monthly. And there might even be a balloon. It depends on what finance dues you get. So the boat itself cost me £47,000. It was at Burton Waters in Ipswich. So when you're buying a boat, it's always recommended, particularly an older boat, to make sure that you get a survey from a chartered surveyor, marine surveyor. They look at the basics of, is it seaworthy, is it safe. And for the marina that I was berthing at, I also needed a BSS, which is a boat safety scheme certificate. BSSs are required if you are on a UK inland waterway. They are optional if you're coastal. But because I'm halfway down a coastal river, although technically classified as coastal, the marina do insist on us having it. So for me to send a surveyor down to Ipswich, to do a survey for him to do the BSS and to cover his travel, that cost me 320 quid. Then I've got my year 1 insurance. Now, just like car insurance, shop around. But it's never probably prudent to stay with the same provider year on year. They do increase and you do accrue no claims. Because I've got 0 no claims in year 1, it cost me £520 for the year, which is on a par with probably what most people pay for the car insurance, I suspect. So yeah, it's not an unreasonable figure. Because at the time I bought the boat, we were still in the first lockdown in 2020. and I'd got no experience. I'd never driven a boat before. I didn't want to go and pick up the boat in Ipswich and actually sail it up. Not only for lack of experience, but the east coast of the UK is a notorious coast. It's very dangerous, and between Ipswich and where I finally ended up in Hull, there are very few areas that you can use as a bolt hole should the weather turn or anything. And also, on an untried and untested boat I didn't know, had no experience of, I didn't want to get 100 miles up the coast, be literally miles away from anywhere, and have the engines break on me. So I opted to throw it on the back of a boat transporter, on the back of a lorry. Now, in my case, the boat weighs 5.5 tons. It was too big to put on a trailer and tow behind something like a 4x4. So I had to get a specialist boat transporter, and I used Beverley Boat Transport, I believe they're called. And it cost me £800 for him to go down, pick it up, put it on the back of his trailer and bring it up, and then get it launched at the other side. Now, there's a bit of variance in the cost for if you're trying to use this as a guideline for your boat. Obviously, the bigger the boat is, the more it costs. My boat is Sally Jane. She's a Sealine S28, so you're talking 28.8 feet, I believe it is, end to end. I think it's about a 10-foot beam. So it's quite a beamy little boat, but in the scale of things, it's quite small. It doesn't need wide load precautions and stuff like that. Whereas, if you're up at the 50 foot, the chances are you're probably going to be classified as a wide load and require an escort as well. So costs will increase on that depending on the size of your boat. As I say, this is purely just for Sally Jane and me. And then obviously when it got to Hull, we needed to lift it off the back of the lorry and into the water. Again, this was all done in lockdown. I couldn't be there, so the marina staff handled all that for me and moved her to a berth for me. So all in, my one-off kind of boat purchase cost, if you like, came to £47,810. £48,810. Sorry. So that got me the boat, and that got it up as far as Hull. Now, there's a few other bits and pieces you need. The boat was supposed to come with fenders and lines. However, in the rush and because it was during lockdown and there was short staff, the marina staff left the fenders and lines in their storage yard rather than putting them on the boat. So I had to buy my own. So fenders are the big kind of bouncy things that sit on the side of the boat, stop it from banging into things. Obviously lines to make it secure, its ropes. So that cost me £420 for 4 new fenders, load of dock lines, a load of fender lines, having them all tied up and sealed at the end so that we don't split and unwrap and all that kind of jazz. Little bit steep, but I didn't really have any options for anything else. The marina had kindly lent me a few, but they needed them back, so I had to really just buy what was available to me at the time again. This was all during the first lockdown, so getting access to stuff and shops and whatnot was more difficult than usual. So yeah, on top of that, other things I had to buy was a boat hook. You've probably seen a boat hook before, length of wood or aluminium tube, something like that, with a weird looking hook on the end. These are useful for grabbing stuff out of the water, hooking onto, say, a man overboard, the back of the life jackets, anything like that. Also useful for picking up lines if you're in the med and you're stern tube berthing, or if you're on a floating mooring, buoyant mooring, anything like that. Very useful. I personally use it for picking up the lines running down the side of a lock to get in and out of Hull Marina. Just use it to grab onto the lines and pull me closer, so I don't actually have to drive towards it. I just kind of level up horizontal to it and then pull myself in. Again, it's a small boat thing. It's a relatively small boat, so you can actually manhandle it by hand. Some of the bigger boats, that's not possible. I am aware of that, but this is again from the aspect of a 28-foot boat. So yeah. I didn't have any life jackets. Now, there's no legal requirement, as far as I'm aware, for you to have life jackets. Unless you're commercial, I'm not going to get into that. But for private leisure, there's no legal requirement for you to have them. Same as there's no legal requirement for you to have training or any kind of certification or anything. But from a safety point of view, you want a life jacket. I wanted enough so that if my friends came out with me, I have enough for all of them, and so I kind of worked out how many to buy based off the friends and my family type. So I went with 6 life jackets, 1 for me and 5 for other people on the boat. The boat was rated for 8 people, so any more than kind of 5 guests and they have to bring their own. But for the most part, the 5 will be sufficient for the amount of people that I'm likely to have on the boat with me at any one point in time. Again, not a real requirement, but I wanted it. A flagpole and an actual flag with the red ensign. Didn't have one on the boat at all. I just really like the look of them, so I went and bought a lovely teak flagstaff and a red ensign. Not massively expensive, but yeah, 40 quid. It looks good. What can I say? Some of the main expense that I've had to buy for this year one is stuff to clean the boat. It's fiberglass, it's GRP. I can't just use some of the aggressive cleaners that I use on the cars and stuff like that. So I've had to buy specific cleaners. I can't use car cleaner on the vinyl seats, for example. So I've had to buy vinyl cleaner because the stuff that I would have used on the car and leather would have damaged the vinyl. So there's a load of different cleaners and polishers and whatnot that I've had to buy for it as well, just to keep things clean. And that includes things like, having some washing up liquids, some hand soap on there, some hand sanitizer since, COVID at the moment, and just some general cleaning stuff for the boat, so you've got stuff on there. And again, that was all upfront one-offs. There's other little bits and pieces in there, like, a set of knives and cutlery for the boat. I've not included them because all I did was I went to Amazon and bought the cheapest I could find. So it was like set of cutlery for 10 quid. If you're a smoker, for argument's sake, that's a pack of fags. So I've not included tiny fees like that because that's not really impactful. I've included just some of the more major ones. So that was that. Then we move on to the kind of monthly running costs. So my monthly fees are £222 for the boat for the mooring at the marina. That's based off the beam, the width, and the length of the boat. So for me, obviously it's £222. If you have a smaller boat, it'd be cheaper. If you have a bigger boat, it'd be more expensive. But £222 a month, which is, in the scheme of things, in most marinas, is very cheap. So it's good for me. But obviously you've got to factor in every month you're going to have to find this money from somewhere. On average, I'm using about 20 quid's worth of electricity a month on the boat with it plugged into the mains in the marina. Now, obviously during winter, that's including running things like 3 tube heaters, 1 in the engine bay, 1 in the aft cabin, 1 in the fore cabin, and a dehumidifier. In the summertime, that's running stuff like aircon, and if I go and stay on the boat, TVs, battery chargers, so the battery's always on charge 24 hours a day, lights, my laptop if I'm working from there, etc., that kind of jazz. So on average, it's about 20 quid a month. Some months more, some months less. It varies, but it's a good ballpark. I would assume for most similar sized boats are going to be, in the same ballpark. Now fuel, this is going to be very controversial, I guess, because fuel is very dependent on the size of the engines and how you drive the boat. If you have a little nanny 50 horsepower boat on engine on a narrow boat, you'll probably run a gallon a month at the most. I don't. I have 2 KAD 32s, which are 170 horsepower each, but they have both a supercharger and a turbocharger. And these engines are very weird in their fuel usage profile. So if you have them at tick over, if you have them at displacement speed 6-7 knots, then they're incredibly efficient. They'll run for ages on a tank. If you have them up on the plane at cruising speed, kind of 3,200 RPM, 23, 24 knots, they'll run for a long time on a tank. You'll get a good 250, 300 miles, I'm guessing. I've never actually measured it, but out of a tank you get a fair old distance. If you run in the mid-range, where it's on the superchargers but not on turbochargers, and you're not quite fully up on the plane and you're heavily loaded, you've got a lot of people, and there's a few factors that play in there, your fuel economy dives through the floor, and you quite happily use half a tank in kind of 20, 30 nautical miles, as I've done myself. Now, a full tank of fuel for Sally Jane from just under quarter full, so to fill it back up to the top, is about £140. So sounds like a lot, but it's getting a fair amount of miles on it, particularly once you're up and running at speed. So it's not that bad, I don't think. And for something that you don't use every day, you can live with it. Now, how's that average down to 40 a month? Well, again, lockdown. There's been several months where I didn't use any fuel whatsoever. And then there's been, 1 or 2 months where I've used a tank in that month. So yeah, it kind of averages out to, over the 8 months that I've owned the boat, to, about 40 quid a month. So far, my running costs are just under £300 a month, 282. Other costs on top for year 2 onwards is going to be, insurance, renewals, let's face it, going to be about 500 quid again. Engine drives and servicing. Now, again, this is massively variable depending on where you are and your access to, engineers or ability to do it yourself. If you can do it yourself, obviously it's going to be considerably less. In my case, I've based those figures off of what Bird and Waters quoted me it would be for their engineer to do engines. So they quoted me £600 per engine and £750 per outdrive to service and replace stuff like bellows and whatnot. So that's going to be one of your big yearly fees, is going to be the engine drive service maintenance. Being able to do it yourself would save you a fair whack of money, but I appreciate not everyone can do that, so I've factored it in the cost. Next one, anti-foul. So anti-foul is the stuff that goes on the bottom of the boat that sits in the water, and it's there to stop barnacles, coral worm, and various other bits of little sea and water nasties from sticking to the bottom of the boat. Now, why is that important? Well, if the bottom of your boat is dirty, it will impact the speed of the boat and the way it runs through the water, and that can result in it becoming much less efficient and burning a lot more fuel to maintain the speed that you would normally do with it's clean. Now, I'm quite lucky in this. The river I'm in, the area I'm in, the Humber up in East Yorkshire, it's a brackish river, but we have very little growth, so the worst we tend to get is slime. Now, the boat has spent 3 months not moving anywhere, and had the marina staff lift it out and just jet wash underneath for me just to clean it out, since I've not been able to get down and go and give it a run. And their report was that there was zero growth on it, it was just slime. So I'm quite happy with that. Obviously some marinas, particularly down south, are known swines for things like barnacles and coral worm in particular, and we're getting everywhere, so you will have to anti-foul. Now, again, I've put it yearly. Depends on the anti-foul you use. There's stuff like copper coat, which apparently you only have to do once every 10 years, so they claim. How true that is anyone's guess. There's other, there's ablative anti-fouls that are designed to kind of shed over time as the boat is used. So the more you use the boat, the faster it sheds, the more it sheds, and so the more often it needs doing. So I've kind of taken a ballpark on this. I looked at how much it would be for me to anti-foul or re-anti-foul my boat with just the same anti-foul that's currently got on it, and it will be about 1,500 quid. Now, I've not included labour in that figure, because anti-foul is something you can do yourself, very easy. All you need is, you know, a little roller, some masking tape, and some sandpaper to wet and dry to clean the bottom. So that is, you know, a bit of manual labour, but doable. If you're paying labour, then expect to pay 200 to 300 a day for someone to come and do it for you. So yeah. The next one, cut and polish. Well, I've included it because I tend to do it every year, and well, I don't personally do it. I pay a company to come and do it, and they charge me 600 quid to do the entire boat. It takes them, I think, two days to cut it all back, clean it, polish it, wax it, and re-ceramic coat it to seal it all. So yeah, a little bit high. Could you do it cheaper? Definitely. If you did it yourself, it would almost certainly be cheaper. There'd be a little bit of initial outlay on things like a DA polisher and some materials and whatnot. But then you've got to think, what's your time worth? And for me, doing that, and I'm not sure or confident in my abilities that I would get the results and the kind of shine and the outcome that a specialist would. So I'm perfectly happy to pay a specialist to get it looking, you know, like brand new for me. So yeah, lift out and relaunch, obviously I've included that because if you're going to do anti-fouls, drive servicing, cut and polish, you do it out the water, not in the water. So you're going to have at least a year, one lift out and one put back in the water every year. And for me, that's 280 quid for a lift out, stick on the hard standing for a few weeks, then put back in. So yeah. So you'll notice that I skipped over MISC and general running costs. So this is very situational. I've estimated my running costs for the first year, or my MISC costs, to be about 1,200 quid. So this is silly little things like treatment for the diesel bug, organic breakdown stuff. System 16 or something like that. I can't remember its name exactly. Some chlorine tablets for the water system to flush through and clean the water system out to make sure that it's safe after the boat being sat on hard standing for 18 months, etc. It's stuff like, as silly as it sounds, drinks, loo roll, kitchen roll. It's stuff, consumables that you will use on the boat when you're there. A sweeping brush, because I didn't have a sweeping brush on there, a little vacuum cleaner to clean the carpets inside. It's all kind of stuff like that. It's consumables, if you like. I mean, I'm including that even things like, you know, Christmas lights to put on the boat at Christmas to make it look pretty in the marina. So yeah, so all in, you're going to be looking at, give or take, at, you know, maybe a grandish. For me, certainly, and probably most boats of a similar size and not a million miles away, some are like £6,500 a year. So, yeah, ignoring training, but we total all of this up, I believe. Did I include training in that? I did. Okay. So we won't ignore training. We'll go back to training. So as I said earlier, I come from a non-boating background. I had no idea how to handle a boat or what was required. All I knew is there was a couple of things I wanted to be able to do. So I obviously need to be able to talk on the radio because it's a very commercialised river. There's commercial traffic and it's controlled by VTS. It's impossible to operate without a radio of some description. Now, marine radio is a VHF. In the UK, that requires you to have a VHF radio operator's license. So the test for that, the certification, the license and everything, that cost me £200. Now, the other side of that is, well, how do you navigate? How do you operate and control a boat? So I looked on the RYA website. I settled on the fact that I needed to do day skipper. That would give me all the skills and all the knowledge that I needed to navigate, to go to places like Scarborough and Whitby up the coast, and you know, Newcastle and everything, and back down, and even enough to see me over to places like the Netherlands, go to Margen, and then into Amsterdam, and maybe even down to Rotterdam. That needs ICC or a 70 as well, but we'll come back to that. So anyway, so I worked out that I needed a day skipper. So I started doing my day skipper theory. That's cost 340 quid. Not a lot of money. It's if you can do it all in one sitting, it's a 5-day course, I believe, with most trainers. The other side of that is the day skipper practical, which again is a 5-day course, including a night sail and sleeping on the boat for a few nights. Obviously this was all done in and out of lockdown and COVID, so with social distancing and various other bits and pieces, I managed to do my day skipper theory, but I couldn't do my day skipper practical. Basically none of the instructors around here were doing it, and for safety's sake it didn't make financial sense for them to run, because normally they'd run with a boat with 6 or 7 people all doing it at once. That covers the running cost of a 40-foot, 50-footage boat. Obviously for social distancing you can only put 2 or 3 people on a boat, so therefore the course costs end up being thousands. So we never did the day skipper practical. I'm hoping to pick it up in 2021, but realistically that's probably going to be 2022 at this rate. So instead what I did was I did the Powerboat 2 practical certification. Now Powerboat 2 is normally done on, or most instructors tend to do it on a rib or a small fast sports boat. I took a slightly different route. I wanted to learn, because obviously my boat's twin engines, most ribs are singles and outboards. I wanted to learn how to do my boat, so I paid a little bit extra to have the instructor come and do Powerboat 2 on my boat and do own boat tuition, and we shortened it down from being a 2-day course to being a 1-day course, because I'd already done all of the theory and the navigation, the light identification, flags, buoys, knots, all that kind of stuff. We'd done all of that as part of a day skipper, so I didn't need to go over that again in Powerboat 2. We just had half an hour to prove that I knew it, and yeah, we went from there. So the Powerboat 2 practical, again, that was 200 quid. Now, what that allowed me to do was to pay 35 quid extra and get my ICC up to 10 metres, which is, you know, kind of 30 foot. It's on my size boat. ICC is International Certificate of Competency, I believe. Basically, it's required for you to have or drive and manage a boat in Europe. It's either that or 70, but they're interchangeable. If you get your ICC, you get the 70 at the same time. So yeah, so I got the up to 10 metres one on that. Now, outstanding on my list of things to do are the day skipper practical, which will allow me to do the ICC for 10 metres plus. But at the moment, that's what I've done. So all in, year 1 training cost 775 quid. We had all of that together. What we get is just under £61,000 for year 1 for Sally Jane. Now, it's a lot of money, but it's not that bad. And if you ignore the fact that I bought the boat in a lump sum, if you actually took it on finance, I reckon that would be within the affordability of probably most people that would say be looking at a 50 grand car. I think the boat is not a million miles away from the costings of a middle of the road car. So that's not too bad, I don't think. And obviously you can do it cheaper. You can go for a smaller boat. You don't have to do the day skipper theory. You don't really have to anti-foul if you get it done when you purchased it. Smaller boats will have smaller mooring fees, and even things like, don't buy life jackets if you're only sitting on a canal and the canal's only ever 2 foot deep. Well, arguably, do you really need it? You're limited to 6 knots. You could technically walk out from the boat to the edge if you needed. It's all situational. In my case, I'm coastal. I'm on a river with high tides and horrible rip currents and whatnot. So yeah, life jackets are vital. So play it as you will, but that's kind of where it is. And so Coming into year 2, once I take off all my upfront fees and I'm purely paying the 2 recurring columns here, and yeah, we're looking more like just under 10 grand a year for keeping the boat and me using it, which again, it's not that much. I broke it down, but just simple divide by 12 here, £830 a month. Well, if you were thinking of buying, you know, a Tesla Model S, for argument's sake, £96,000, you'll be looking at £1,000 a month finance on that. So I think for me, certainly 830 quid would be affordable. And I suspect most people with a bit of wiggling could afford to get into boating. Looking at this, it's certainly not been as expensive and as daunting as I first thought. But yeah, so that's it. That's my boring numbers on how much it's cost me to buy and run Sally Jane. Any questions, ask them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. If you want me to go into any more specific details about individual items, obviously all these prices are situational. If you're not in the UK, all these prices will mean nothing to you. If you are in the UK, if you're down on the south coast, expect everything to be double of what it is up north. If you're up in Scotland, you're probably cheaper still than I am even. So, you know, it is going to vary massively to where you are. The only real thing that's probably the same on all of them is like the boat cost. You buy a £47,000 boat, it's going to be the same price anywhere in the UK. So yeah, that's it really. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry it's not an interesting video on the boat, and instead it's a boring video looking at a spreadsheet, but I hope that's shed a bit of light on the costs for you, and if you're thinking about getting into boating, hopefully it's not put you off. So yeah, good luck, and if you do have a boat or you are getting out onto the water, just remember, be careful, because you know, if you get into trouble out there, people like the Coast Guards, RNLI, they're putting themselves in danger to come and rescue your ass because you didn't check your engines before you went anywhere. So yeah, just remember, safety first. Take care, and see you later.